Hey friend, welcome back to Chronic Health Solutions. All right, we are at a new year, and for so many of us, that means New Year goals and basically just trying to set plans for ourselves. And hopefully, the goal obviously is to be consistent with that. But often, what we find with chronic illness is that that doesn't happen. And today we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, why you struggle so much to stick with those New Year goals, and then also what you can do instead. So let's get started. Welcome to Chronic Health Solutions. If you're more than just a tired mom, I'm talking trying to make it through the day without crashing by noon, you're not alone. I'm Ashley, a wife, mom, and certified health coach. I have been where you are, battling chronic health symptoms and chronic illness, things like brain fog, joint pain, and fatigue that made me wonder if I'd ever feel like myself again. After uncovering root causes like stress, poor sleep, and hormone imbalance, I found simple health routines to begin to feel better, one simple habit at a time. Keeping up with your kids is not impossible. Pop in your earbuds and take a break from the chaos. It's you time. Okay, tell me if this sounds similar, if you've had a similar experience. I can remember January's past where it was almost like I had this feeling of excitement, but then also dread at the same time because I wanted to do a reset on some of my habits. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to start new routines and build momentum to achieve the goals that I had for my life. But oftentimes what I found was my body did not line up with my plans. It was like my body was not on board with my plans, basically. So, I'd make the plan. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to create this whole new schedule and we're going to be consistent in our routine. I'm going to make sure the house is cleaned up every single day. And then by week 2, I would have a flare up of symptoms. It would be brain fog or fatigue, or I was feeling really inflamed and my joints were hurting. I just felt off. I was overwhelmed. And everything just felt harder to do. So naturally, the resistance of creating all of these new goals, it was just too much for my body. And so I would give up. And, a lot of times I would, especially in those really rough seasons, if I was in the middle of a crash, I would think, I can't even stick to the basics. How can I start adding in new things? How can I really ever start to feel better if I just can't even stick to the basics of taking care of myself in the house? And that can often lead to feelings of shame and guilt. It can lead to you being really inconsistent with habits. And, it's just so hard. And the thing that I've had to learn is that traditional goal setting is built for people who have margin in their schedule, who have margin with their bodies, not for those who are carrying chronic symptoms, who are dealing with chronic illness, who have kids, who are neurodivergent and often just create, there can be a lot of inconsistency because they just have different struggles from day to day. And so it can be really hard to then try to add on these new goals and these new habits that we're wanting to do, especially when we are doing so many of them all at once and we're trying to do this complete overhaul of our life. It is no wonder that we're setting ourselves up for failure. And part of that is also that your nervous system, it becomes overwhelmed. And then you are trying to fit your life into these very rigid routines that are just not feasible for your body or for your children. And you are adding these really high expectations to yourself. And suddenly your nervous system is just completely fried, overwhelmed, and it is just too much. So then that's when you notice you're going back to doing the same old. You have not made progress. And it's just this never ending loop. So let's talk about how can we do this differently to begin to actually see success. So first, let's talk about why this is such a struggle and why we notice that a lot of times these traditional New Year's goals, or really just goal setting in general, especially when we are looking at habits for our life, we tend to fail at those. Part of the reason why these traditional New Year's plans don't work for us is because this assumes that we have consistent energy, and a lot of times you don't. You have those ebbs and flows in your energy level. And so what this New Year's plan is assuming is that you are going to be able to repeat the same routine every day over and over and over. It's going to be that consistent effort every single day. And the other thing about this is it often feeds into that push through mindset that leaves us then ending up in a crash. And what a lot of people who have bodies that are not dealing with chronic illness and chronic symptoms is they can do that little bit of push through and then they bounce back easily, but that might not be the case for you. And so you don't really have that predictable capacity, that predictable energy levels. And that means that you have to have a plan that can be flexible with you, with your symptoms, with your household. The other thing is that a lot of times, and I kind of vaguely mentioned this, these New Year's plans require willpower. It's that pushing through, doing it even when you don't feel like it. But a lot of times your body doesn't actually need that. Your body doesn't need you to push it even more because it is already just barely making it by. Like you're already almost out of gas, as we've talked about before. And what you need is to actually regulate your body, not push it through and continue to push. So the idea of using willpower in order to get through, when you are dealing with chronic illness, you're in chronic stress, you are parenting your neurodivergent kids, and then you have all this fatigue that you're dealing with, it's just going to push you right back into survival mode, which is exactly what we want to get out of. So you cannot, when your nervous system is dysregulated and your body needs rest, you cannot push yourself or use willpower in order to get out of that or to give your body what it needs. Your nervous system needs safety. It needs rest before you can then get to the point of motivation and pushing. And I want to share a little bit of a personal story for me, especially as someone who has kind of come on the other side of so many of these chronic symptoms, who occasionally has a flare up. And I was sick for a couple of weeks over Christmas. And what I noticed, and it was so interesting for me to now realize the mindset shift between how I used to approach things versus now, because I was not getting a lot of rest. I was just not able to rest well, even though I was spending a lot of time in bed. Thank goodness for my husband taking care of things. But what I realized is it was right around the holidays, and the temptation to push myself and to not rest was so strong because we want to do all the special things. We want to make the goodies. We want to, make all these special holiday memories for our kids. And what I had to realize is, okay, there are some things that are a top priority. I want to do these things. And so I am going to prioritize those. But at the same time, it is perfectly okay for me to rest. And I knew my body needed the rest. Even after the point of running a fever, my body was just dragging. I was exhausted. A lot of times I couldn't stay awake. I napped multiple times, which is not normal for me at all. And so it was just so interesting to realize, even if we come on the other side of these symptoms, our bodies are always going to struggle a little bit more. I had other people in my house who battled the same sickness, and they were, a little, they didn't feel great, but they were not down as much as I was. And so being able to then implement that mindset, even when it comes to sickness, and say, okay, I know I need to rest, even though other things, I would like to be doing other things. In a typical holiday season, these are the things I would be doing, but I'm going to choose to give myself grace and give my body what it needs so that I'm not trying to recover from this a month later because I pushed myself so much. So that's just kind of a personal note and something that I think when we can begin to really change the way that we treat our bodies and the way that we approach productivity, especially when we are dealing with chronic symptoms, it can make such a lasting impact on our longevity in general, because I know myself and I know if I had continued to push, I would probably still be sick right now, whereas I'm feeling pretty much mostly back to normal at this point in time. Okay, then the third reason why these New Year's goals don't work is because they are adding pressure, which is stress, which is going to, of course, raise your cortisol levels, which is going to then increase inflammation and mess your blood sugar up, and then it can often cause a flare up. So again, you've lived this over and over, and I kind of referred to that with me mentioning being sick and knowing I can't put pressure on myself, especially whenever it's things that don't have to be done. So we have to come up with a plan that is going to reduce stress, reduce pressure, not add more to it. Okay, so let's talk about some nervous system friendly plans that you can begin to implement that are actually going to help you to feel better this year and not set you up for failure. The first one is to choose one anchor habit, not a list of things, not 50 things that you want to change, not, I'm going to start exercising every single day. The likelihood of you being able to consistently do that is not, it's just not common. It's not high. The likelihood is not good. Okay, so maybe it is that you do want to move your body. So instead, it's that I'm going to get up and move for 10 minutes a day. Start small. It could be I'm going to increase the amount of water I'm drinking by 1 glass a day. Or I'm going to make sure I'm having a protein-rich breakfast. I'm hitting 30 or 40 grams of protein with my breakfast every single day. Maybe it's that I'm going to start a 10-minute nighttime routine, wind down routine, where I add magnesium cream to my body. I do some gentle stretching. I do all my skincare. And it's just that simple, gentle way of getting my body into that sleep mode so that I can then begin to prioritize and get better rest, which we know is so important. Maybe it's that you're going to spend 10 minutes a day out in the sun. I'm not saying add all of these things. Pick one. Pick one thing that you feel like is the most important to you, especially like looking at your symptoms. What do you think would make the biggest impact? Or what is it that you're struggling with the most? And then also, what would be the easiest for you to start? I don't recommend starting with the hardest thing first because we're more likely to give up on it. Let's give ourselves easy wins so that we can remind our brain, yes, I can do this. I can make these changes. I can be consistent. It's just when we are expecting ourselves to be consistent with so much at one time, our brain gets overwhelmed and it shuts down and it says, I can't do this. So we have to figure out a plan that is going to set ourselves up for success. Okay, the other thing you can do is to set up more of a flexible routine instead of having this like rigid, it must be done this way no matter what. So instead of it being, I will drink 80 ounces of water a day, let's instead say I'm going to add 1 extra glass of water. If you get to 80 that day, that's great. But if you don't, focusing on just 1 extra glass is completely doable. If it's that I'm going to move 15 minutes, maybe it's not that you're going to move 15 minutes every day, but it's that you're going to begin to prioritize moving 15 minutes a day. And if you have a really bad day where you're flaring up, maybe you don't move at all, or maybe you bump that back to 5 minutes. It's just learning to give a little bit with the goals that you have for yourself. And again, like I mentioned with my example of being sick, of learning to have grace for ourselves and understanding that a lot of times that is truly what our bodies need. And the last thing I want you to do is when you are sitting down to create this plan, again, focus on one anchor habit. We're not creating a plan of a bunch of different things. So when you sit down to decide this one anchor habit, let's say that, think about it like this. Ask yourself this first. Okay, I'm going to think about the worst week that I've had in the last year. And then I'm going to ask myself, if I were living that week again, what could I sustain in this anchor habit on my worst week, not on my best week? Because we're always going to say the worst is going to be our goal. But then obviously if we can go above and beyond that when we feel well, that is great. But we're not setting the bar so high that it's hard for us to consistently achieve it. And so therefore we feel like a failure and we give up. Instead, we set the bar low, we start small so that we can get those quick wins, so we can get the consistency and the consistent wins. And then that motivates us to then begin to add more changes to our life. Okay, so I also think that this question can really prevent you from pushing yourself too far and then burning out. And I know that that can be such a struggle as well. All right, friends, I hope that this is helpful. This is such a small shift, and I know it feels like sometimes it can feel almost like a letdown, but I want to encourage you that it is better for you to choose something small and to be consistent with that one change for the rest of the year than to try to or determine that you're going to overhaul 10 areas of your life and give up in 2 weeks. So I just want to encourage you to look at that mindset shift and say, what is one small anchor habit I can do consistently for the next year? And of course, if you are able to achieve that and you feel like you're consistently adding that into your daily routine, it's no longer a struggle, then by all means, add in another anchor habit. And I think it could be really fun to sit down and even make a list of maybe 5 anchor habits that are your goal for the year, but then you just start with one, you focus on that. And then once you've achieved that and are really good and consistent with that, you can always go down to the next list as well. So I would love to hear from you guys. What is your one anchor habit that you're going to focus on as you're going into the new year? You can come over to our Facebook group and share with us there, or you can email me or reach out to me on social media. That is all I have for this episode. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you back next time. Hey friend, I hope you found today's episode helpful. If you did, would you take a minute to share it with another mom who's struggling with chronic symptoms? And leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to me to know this podcast is making a difference for you. All right, it's time for me to go tackle those snack requests, and remember that a short walk, even if the kids turn it into a race, still counts as self-care. Keep chasing those little wins. Even when it feels messy, you're making progress. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. I'm not a doctor, and this podcast is not intended to treat or diagnose any condition. You're the expert on your body. Listen to it and reach out to a trusted provider for support.